Hello everyone, we're now in Scorpio, and this is a very profound and powerful time because the significance and energy of Scorpio is dealing with the most primal parts of ourselves, the source of all our power and of our strength. And you might think, what's the source of all our power? Is it love? Is it God? Well, yes, but where did all of those things come from? What are all things in the universe created from? Well, it is from our creative force, or in other words, our sexual energy. If you've not watched my videos covering topics on sexual transmutation and alchemy, and also seeing the resources in the description of those, I'll leave links in the description below, and you might want to meditate on those resources for a while, and then the topics discussed in this video might make more intuitive sense. So, bear with me here. I want to set some foundations with understanding sexual energy in order to understand the very powerful energy of Scorpio, and then I'll also be sharing some astral experiences and practices related to all of this. So, Scorpio is really significant, especially during this time and era we're in. We're currently in the age of Aquarius, and the Gnostic teachings teach that the age of Aquarius started on the 4th of February 1962. And it's not just Aquarius that's significant during this time, but in a way, more significantly, it's Scorpio, because Scorpio is ruled by the angel Samael. Now, Samael is the angel or ruler or genie of the planet Mars. Mars and also Pluto rules Scorpio, and both of these planets are to do with our creative force directed towards a goal. So, Scorpio, Samael, Mars, Pluto, they all rule our most powerful force within us, which is our sexual organs. Or in terms of the chakras, they're most related to our root or sacral chakras. So this is why after the 60s, when the age of Aquarius began, we saw a huge difference in the way humanity treated sex. The hippie movement came, nudity was suddenly okay, and people were just generally very liberal with sex. And even today, it's continued to be even more sexually volatile. We have Tinder culture, pornography, movies, books, celebrities, all just totally sexual, sexualizing, fetishizing everything. And even the most trending topics in the collective right now is all about gender identity, LGBT, battle of the sexes, etc. It's such a big topic because at the same time, it's a very massive part of our lives. As I said, it's the source of our being. And yet, it's also a big part that we barely understand. Or at least for some of us, we are just starting to comprehend it on a mass scale, very slowly. That's what this era is all about. And that's why there is so much crisis in sex, for us to understand and learn from these problems that are arising in our species. So, this is one of the main purposes of this time, to understand our animal self, our primal self, and how that connects to higher spirituality. And Scorpio is one of the most potent times to realize that. Now, remember, sexual energy is not just about sex, right? It's not just about one's sexual preferences or identity or who you're attracted to, etc. Sexual energy is the foundation to our physical being. It is the reason we were born into this life. So, sexual energy, you could say, contains the blueprints for what kind of person we are in a fundamental way. Everything we do in life, everything we say, everything we think, everything we are passionate about is sexual at its core. If you can understand this, you can understand topics like law of attraction and manifestation really profoundly. Now, as I said, in this era, we're in the process of wrapping our heads around this because, for most of us, it is terribly difficult to understand. And I know most people watching this video are going to be like, what the hell is he talking about? It's especially difficult to understand if you don't have, or if we have abused our sexual energy, or in other words, if we've been really like over the top, really lustful or addicted to pornography or whatever. If we're like that, then fine, but we only ever see sex then as totally separate from everything else in life, totally separate from every other dimension, psychologically, emotionally. That's how we see it. But if we at least try to balance this sexual center within ourselves, then we can start to see how it applies to different domains of our life. So, this is what makes the practice of sexual transmutation and alchemy so significant, because we can then work with ourselves at a much more intimate and deeper level of our being. This is what it means to become a tantric practitioner, to be aware of our base, primal, universal, pranic energies from moment to moment, instead of ignoring it and letting it unconsciously manifest itself in the many ways it does. Now, it's not easy, obviously, and as I said, the sexual sign of Scorpio has tremendous power and strength. It's like pure potential, which can be used to ascend or descend. So, this is why, if you've ever read Samael Aun-Weor's work, which I've talked a lot about, almost all of his work talks about sexual energy in a really direct way. Samael Aun-Weor, the person who wrote all of these amazing books on Gnosis, incarnated his real being, which is the Logos, or the angel Samael. That is who his person was connected to. And so when you read his books, they're not really written in like a human way. They're written from a sort of divine way, or divine revelationary way. So you see, each one of us is not supposed to follow some religion or master blindly, but instead, ultimately, we're meant to incarnate our real being. Each one of us has a specific master or being or logos that we're all connected to within. And it's something that we can incarnate and merge with and have union with. And also, we all have our own real name, not our, terrestrial earthly name, but our eternal real name that we can discover in the astral. So, the angel Samael has often been misunderstood, especially by people who don't know any better or are like religious fanatics or something. I would say Samael has been misunderstood similar to the concept or idea of Lucifer. People saying it's the devil or evil or something, and people do this because they lack depth of insights or are stuck in duality, seeing everything as either good or bad. But both, Samael and Lucifer is neither good or bad. Lucifer is known as the light bearer. What is light? Light is just light, right? We can have dark light or white light. We can have the illusory light of ego, or the pure light of consciousness, or the light of pure consciousness. Where did light first come from? If you think back on the light of your first memories, you were born through the sacred act of sex. That applies for our physical bodies and also for our other bodies, such as the astral body. It is the same with all of creation, as above, so below. That's why it's said, in the beginning, God said, let there be light. And the world, creation, was born. So this light, at its very root, is sexual. So this is why Lucifer is mostly seen as evil or negative. Why? Because what does humanity do with most of our light? We, humanity, takes advantage of the potent, magnetic, sexual, energetic, creative force of light for things like lust, violence, anger, hatred, greed, selfishness, and all other kinds of negative ego light. This is false light, illusory light. In Hindu terms, it is Maya, illusion. So this is a thing that religious people, especially priests and people like that, should really understand, that to talk in strictly Christian terms here, both angels and demons were born through sexual energy. It's not that only demons use sexual energy and the angels and God are just like abstinent. No, they would have no power then. If that were the case, humanity would have perished a long time ago in just complete darkness. So, sex is sex. A sword is a sword. In a battle between light and dark, both sides use a sword. So it depends on what we do with this sword that counts. So God and angels are also sexual. But we don't understand this. Why? Because in reality, we resonate or are more like demons. Remember, I'm still talking in just Christian terms. Don't get caught up in, fear mongering, because I know that's easy when we're talking in Christian terms. But we really are more like demons. We're more in the darkness, right? We are submerged in 97% subconsciousness, ego, that is darkness. Darkness meaning lack of light. And so we don't comprehend what it is like to have liberated, purified, sanctified, harnessed, and mastered sexual energy. We're so blinded and corrupted in our perceptions of sex by lust and movies and passions that it's almost impossible for most of us to see this divine and beautiful and innocent and pure nature of the combination of love, sex, and religion. So, as a species and individuals, sexual energy is our source of greatest power, but it's also the source that can easily destroy us the most. The Hebrew word Samael means medicine of God and also poison of God. So the significance of sexual duality should be very clear by now. It can either create or destroy. For example, a man can have a happy family and marriage for many years, but after just falling to one temptation outside of his marriage, he can lose his whole family and all of his material wealth very quickly. So this is just one example of how it can destroy us. You can think of many more yourself. So with all of this knowledge, we can better understand Scorpio in a deeper way, about how intense it is, about how deep it is. And really, for me, intuitively, everything that I just said describes Scorpio very well. But if it doesn't quite make sense, we can describe Scorpio more exoterically. And as I've been emphasizing, Scorpio is really powerful and strong. So people who are born under Scorpio usually have a very strong will. If they want something, they will get it, and they will do what they must do to get it. Every Scorpio I know is like that. They are great achievers. They have an iron will. That's why their metal is iron, and they're usually quite magnetic and intense. Iron also being the most magnetic material too. Now, being so will orientated, they also have to temper their anger and passions. And forgiveness can also be difficult for them too. And so, with all of this power to utilize, transformation and rebirth and regeneration are common themes that can be really present in a Scorpio's life. And a lot of crisis can happen during different stages of their lives. So just remember that crisis isn't a bad thing. Without crisis, it can be difficult to initiate change. Crisis, as well as ego, actually facilitates the revolution and awakening of our consciousness. It gives us the reason to have the will to transform our consciousness. And so this applies to all of us as well, really, especially during this time, that whenever we have some kind of ego or emotional crisis, we have to take advantage of it and use our will to really try and comprehend what has actually happened and why, and why I'm in this situation and why my emotions have come to this point. Because during this time, it can be one of the most emotional times for us. So we have to try and master and come to fully know and understand the negative occurrences that happen within us. So for Scorpio people who don't develop this superior strength of this Scorpio sign to know one's psyche in depth, usually end up becoming the dominating type. They end up trying to dominate others instead to gain that sense of power that they crave or that they have in their destiny. But obviously, that is not a strength, it's a weakness to try and control and dominate others. You might have also heard that Scorpios are the jealous type too, and there's a reason for that, because Scorpios are very committed people, because they are very sexual, they're powerful, intense, and when they get into a relationship, they are very committed to it. They give their whole life and soul to them, and so they also want that in return, and they also want to know things fully. So when they get into a relationship, they also want to know that person fully as well. And so, behind all of this, when a Scorpio falls in love, they fall in love really intensely and also want the same from their partner. So if they see any clues or any signs of infidelity, of not being loyal, they can start to be possessive or jealous or distrustful. So it's important for Scorpios to make sure they find someone who is like 300% loyal and committed. So with Scorpio being a deep and intense sign, their opposite sign is Taurus, which represents groundedness and harmony and stability. It's earthy, the earth element, which is what they can learn from Taurus, since Scorpio is water, or more like rushing water. Taurus has less problems in life and doesn't take things too seriously. And even if Taurus people suffer, they value more harmony and peace. So Scorpio, and also Aries, I would say, can learn from Taurus in the sense that they need to temper their sense of trying to create or initiate conflicts and create intense energy all of the time. Taurus can basically teach Scorpio by saying, hey, I know you're super strong and I know you're on the way to becoming a really powerful person, but you need to lay down your armor sometimes, every now and then, and just take it easy. Otherwise, you're going to create excess unnecessary suffering, because it's only in this more balanced and present sense or state of being that a Scorpio can realize that a lot of their suffering is self-created, such as, their sense of being betrayed is just created by their own fear or paranoia or past pain. So Scorpio has a lot of energy, and being grounded and being able to self-observe themselves is really important. And so that brings us on to the practices for Scorpio, which, of course, the first ones that I already hinted to is to practice transmutation. But also, to go deeper in the practical side, I want to complement all of this with a couple of my own astral experiences with Samael. The first one was quite a while ago. I had woken up in the astral and I immediately started to call out for Samael while in the astral plane. After really calling for him for some time, of course, I expected him to show up because I really wanted to see him and meet with him and talk with him. But instead, I was presented with three women that I had been attracted to in the past. And so, of course, this was really surprising because, these were people I was attracted to years ago in my teens. It feels like almost a lifetime ago. And I could have completely fell in that moment and fallen into a dream, just lost consciousness because of lust, right? But luckily, I realized that it was the angel Samael who put them there to show me that my sexual energy was still sort of attached to them in a lustful way. It's very hard to explain the intuitive messages that I got by reflecting on seeing them, but in short, it really helped me to understand the origins of where I started to become a lustful person, or how these egos of lust started to manifest within me. It reminds me a bit about the famous image or story of Buddha being tempted by lust and anger and other monsters while he's meditating. So you can see how Samael is an angel who helps us to discover the most deepest and intense parts of our being that we wouldn't usually look at, especially if we're afraid of the dark, right? Afraid of our subconsciousness. So, this is the amazing thing about the astral, too, about how it becomes a confirmation that it wasn't a dream. It wasn't a typical dream, right? Because I totally expected for Samael to appear. I've been in many lucid dreams where, I ask for something or try to manifest something, it appears instantly with total ease. But instead, in this one, I asked for Samael and instead I see these attractive women. So, it also demonstrates how the energy of Samael can really help us to look within, to reveal this darkness and help us know ourselves, or to do the shadow work, as many people say these days. So that's another practice for this period. Ask Angel Samael for help, both in waking life and in dreams, and just see what you discover, because it will be really interesting. Before sleep, you can simply pray or ask Angel Samael, help me to discover what I need to know about myself in order to overcome my biggest obstacles. He can show you profound things like the difference between love and lust, and help us to purify and sanctify our emotions and sexual energy, and help us to psychologically comprehend it as well in deep ways. As I said, it was difficult for me to describe to you just then the energy or the realizations that I had, because it wasn't an intellectual realization, it was a sexual realization. And the second practice and the second experience I want to share complements all of this, because maybe you're not ready to look deeper within. Maybe you're already overwhelmed by your ego and afraid to look within, afraid of your own darkness. Well, this other astral experience I had was just a few days ago. It was on the 24th of October, when the period of Scorpio began and when these energies of Samael, started to happen. Remember that the angels are not just something external. It's not just like some guys, one guy going around. Logos, it means like a multiplicity of the divine, or in other words, the angels are a part of all of us, a part of all of our being, just in the same way that we all have God within us, just in the same way we all have an inner Buddha or an inner Christ. So don't feel like a stranger asking, to work with some strange angel entities. We're just working with a part of our being that is going to work with us to help us. So to continue, on the 24th of October, when Scorpio began, when I went to sleep, I prayed to Samael and asked him to show me what I need to know. And so in this astral experience, it was really interesting. I ended up seeing Samael Envior in his recent incarnation practicing self observation. I just watched him for some time walking around a city, totally aware of himself, but also self-observing. So by doing this, he was teaching me, which is a really powerful way compared to just talking like we are, right? He was modeling, which is a term we use in teaching to describe when the teacher demonstrates something instead of talking about it. So this is the great thing about astral projection, again, which I've said in the past. You can learn things in the astral in totally different ways, in more real ways, with the whole energetic, emotional, psychological experience of it, rather than just, intellectually studying things or watching videos. Like now, in the astral, we can really learn things through direct experience. So, yes, as I watched him practice self observation, as I watched him model this practice of self observation, I saw or understood two major things that he did simultaneously, or that he showed me, you could say. He showed me that he was totally self aware of both his external world and also his internal world of perceptions, things like thoughts, feelings, desires, visual images that all happen in our inner world, right? So that's the first point that we want to understand about self-observation in this present moment, that we want to be totally aware of our external environment and also our internal environment. And at the same time, he was also questioning everything he saw. It looked like that he was reflecting on them with his awareness. In other words, he didn't take anything at face value, both his external perceptions and also his internal perceptions. Okay? That means he didn't identify with anything, externally and internally. And this is really powerful because as he watched his inner and outer world while going around, walking around this city, he didn't add on his own ego perceptions and judgments and opinions and inner dialogue of ego. He just watched them and that's it. It's really simple, right? If we observe things and watch things and then add our own subjective experience on it, we are not experiencing objective reality, right? We are then coloring in or adding our own colorations of our own ego, our own subjectivity. Okay? So I hope that makes sense. So this is also another practice for this time period. Obviously, we should do it all year round, all the time, from moment to moment, but especially during this time, it can be really powerful. So practice self-observation during the day, from moment to moment. Remember that Scorpio is a sign that wants to know itself deeply at a primal level. And what I felt that Samael was saying to me with this experience is that, look, this time period is going to be really emotional and difficult and full of tests, probably very overwhelming. And while we may fail every now and then, especially in the beginning, the least we can do is simply self-observe in order to learn and understand. Because it's fine to have failures, but if we identify with failures, creating a psychological story over them, then we're failing even more, right? So when I say self-observe, I don't mean to judge ourselves, right? Pure consciousness, pure awareness does not judge. Remember this quote by Jiddu Krishnamurti: self-observation without judgment is the highest form of intelligence. So with this practice of self-observing from moment to moment, really seeing our inner perceptions in all the different centers of our human machine, we can really begin to know ourselves in a very deep way, especially sexually too. And what I mean by that is how our sexual, motor, instinctive self moves during the day, such as any desires that control us. For example, let's say we're shopping at a mall and we see a beautiful woman. How does our body move energetically? How does it feel? How do we feel? Where do our eyes go? What happens to our willpower? Do we start walking towards that woman, watching them, right? Totally forgetting ourselves and what we were doing, what, items we were looking for. Or maybe if we're a woman, if a man approaches us and asks for our number and compliments us or whatever, how do you feel afterwards? Are you blushing inside? Do you start forgetting yourself? Do you start becoming really self-conscious and shy? Start fantasizing maybe about this man in some kind of fairy tale story in the head where you start dating him or whatever, right? So remember, I'm not saying any of this is bad. We have to learn to not judge ourselves in order to see reality, right? Ego judgments stop reality. So this is about remembering ourselves from moment to moment in an intense way, right? We can't just self-observe when we're happy, when we're feeling peaceful, because that's very easy. But to self-observe when we're having our most negative and unconscious moments, we have to bring consciousness to the unconsciousness. If you want real, lasting transformation, that's when you want to practice. See my video on the Key of Sol if you want a more in-depth explanation of self-observation. So all of this points towards the mystery that we must descend in order to ascend. In other words, to descend into our own hell in order to shine the light of consciousness there. Or in other words, to descend into our own subconsciousness in order to see what's happening. Or in other words, to descend into the ninth sphere, which is Yesod in Kabbalah, which is also Eden, which is sexual energy. So remember that I mentioned that Pluto also rules Scorpio. And as some of you may know in esoteric studies, Pluto represents our subconsciousness. That means our inner darkness that we have to discover in order to awaken. We cannot, it is impossible to awaken if we don't look into our own darkness. That's why Pluto is so hidden, far away in the darkness of our solar system. So Scorpios are usually good psychologists naturally and can know people in a very intuitive way. And that's what we want to do here. That's the essence of the practical astrological side of Scorpio, to know our deepest and furthest reaches of our own inner solar system and to aim ourselves directly at expansive self-knowledge, so much so that we can reach the planet of Pluto, the depths of our psyche. Okay, so I hope you're enjoying this series on Gnostic practical astrology. The next one will be on Sagittarius.